This is question 2. Look at this question. There is a load, there is 600 Newton, there is angle alpha with the x-axis, there is another angle 35 degrees with the 300 Newton, and there is another force 700 Newtons with an alpha angle. So he wants to determine the alpha, he wants to know the angle alpha in both sides as the same, alpha here and alpha here. Determine alpha so that the resultant of the force of the three forces is vertical. So the resultant of all these three forces is vertical. This is by definition, it's like that. If someone said that the resultant is vertical, which means if the resultant is vertical, which means that Rx is equal to 0. If the resultant was horizontal, Ry is equal to 0. Okay? So now, since he said here that the resultant is vertical, the three forces resultant is vertical, which means that Rx is equal to 0. Now, let's find Rx. Let's go and find Rx. Let's just put the loads. And I think it's good to find the Rx. Do you know why? Because W is unknown. We don't want to make this one because if you make Ry, you're going to have a problem finding W. Now, Rx, the Y is not in Rx. So we could find Rx. So summation of forces at x equal to 0. And this is, as we said, resultant is vertical, Rx is equal to 0. Rx, summation of forces at x equal to 0. Now, 600 cosine alpha in the x-axis. And 300 cosine what? 35 and alpha. Because these two angles should include, because you're going to find the angle toward the x-axis. So 600 cosine alpha plus 300 cosine 35 plus alpha. And then look at this. This is in the negative x. Minus 700 cosine alpha equal to 0. Okay. Now, you can see here that here there is 600 and here there is 700 and everything, all the hundreds. We should divide by 100 for all. It will be 6 cosine theta plus 3 cosine theta cosine 35 plus alpha minus 7 cosine alpha. Now remember, minus 7 cosine plus 6 cosine, that's minus cosine. So 6 cosine alpha minus 7, that's minus cosine alpha. And we put this 3 cosine 35 plus alpha. You divide by 100 and then you subtract this from this to find out this. So you end up with this. Now, you have to open this. Well, if you go to calculus or pre-calculus, to open this, cosine and angle 35 plus alpha, which means that it's cosine alpha cosine 35 minus sine alpha sine 35. This is by definition. Cosine 35 plus alpha is equal to cosine alpha cosine 35 minus sine alpha sine 35. This is times 3 minus cosine alpha equal to 0. Now, let's see if we could divide by cosine here. Let's divide by cosine here. If you divide this by cosine, it will be 3 cosine 35. By cosine, it is minus tan. Of course, the 3 is also here. Minus 3 tan alpha, because sine over cosine, sine 35. And minus cosine over cosine, that's minus 1, equal to 0. So now, cosine 35, we just put it in the calculator, times 3, it will be like this. And minus 3 tan alpha sine 35, you find it as times 3 is minus 1.72 tan alpha minus 1. So you rearrange the equation, you'll get tan alpha is equal to this. You'll end up with alpha is equal to tan inverse 0.8485. It's equal to 40.265. So this is now the angle. This is the angle that we want to find. That's the first part. So the angle is equal 40.265. Now this is determine the angle, so the resultant of the three forces is vertical. So we find the angle. What is the magnitude of the resultant? Now, so the magnitude of the resultant, Rx is equal to 0. Now, we have something that's not equal to 0, which is Ry. So let's find the magnitude of Ry. So Ry, let's look at this. 700, not cosine, sine alpha. 700 sine alpha. Alpha we just found. And 600 sine alpha, of course, because 600 here is cosine alpha and sine alpha. plus 600 cosine alpha. No, 600 sine alpha. And remember, this is the angle 35 plus alpha. This is cosine, and sine is the other side. 300 sine 35 alpha. 35 plus alpha. So you do it like this. 300 sine 35 plus alpha. Alpha is given, so you just add it up, and you'll end up with the resultant of the Ry is equal 1130.3 Newton. This is the answer for question number 2, and that is an easy question too. Thank you.